If you're someone who has watched my videos before, then you know that over the last few months, I slowly fell into this rut and I was really depressed. Like, I was already depressed, but it got much worse over the last few months. I also finally finished college somehow, and now I have to look for a job. Even my YouTube channel, which once was somewhat consistent, it kind of fell apart and I just stopped making things. And things just weren't okay, really. In the last video, I mentioned how, most of the day was spent driving. Somehow, I really felt quite good during this period, actually. Thankfully for me, I went on another one from the end of October to the beginning of November. And while nothing really happened important during this road trip, I think it was like how long it went on for. And the fact that I already had so much on my mind, and it gave me the time to process these things, and I don't know what it was really. I think it was just like a really good mixture of getting out there, seeing some cool things, and also my mindset being different in how I was approaching the problems that were there in my mind. Now, I don't want to say that like this road trip fixed all of my problems or that this changed my life or anything of the sort. It just gave me a little bit of peace, and I think I learned quite a few things from my time on it and also from the time after it, because when I came back, I was in a slightly different mind space than I was before I went there, and I think that gave me the ability to be able to approach life in a different way. And in this video, I just want to like reflect on these things, reflect on the road trip, and talk about the things that I've learned during and after the road trip. The hope is that even if you can't go on one yourself, you might be able to somewhat live through my experiences, even though I didn't actually record enough of the footage from the road trip, which I realize now that I'm going through it. But here it goes. I drive when I'm on a road trip. I'm driving myself most of the times. Unfortunately, I can't take footage of me driving because that would be quite against traffic laws. There is this one footage of when I was stuck in a traffic jam. This was a ridiculously long traffic jam on Mountain Road, which is actually kind of hard because you need to like stop and go while on an uphill, which does become a bit problematic, especially when the cars behind you are like right on your ass, so you just like don't have that much time to roll back and stuff. But this was a pretty good journey, I think. The only thing is I don't really like traveling when the sun is out because it's hot, it's just not fun. And I really wish this whole road trip was taking place during the rain, but I didn't get much rain, if any, during this trip, so that's quite unfortunate. The special part about this time that I was going there was that the place where I'm usually going to, my dad told me that there's going to be a library there. Usually I wouldn't go to a library because I didn't know it's there, but apparently there has been a library there all along and I just didn't know about it. But this time I did, so yay. So in my mind, I knew that this was going to be a really fun time there because I was going to be able to go to a library every day, and that's exactly what happened. I spent most of my time there in the library because there is just so much fun to be had in a library for me. If there was a library where I live, I would be there every single day, but there isn't, so I had to just enjoy the little time I had over there. I think the one problem with being in a library is that there's just so many books, and you just kind of want to read all of them. There is genuinely just so many books, and I don't think I could ever read all of these. And even with the ones that I wanted to read, I still couldn't do it because every time I sat down with the book, I was like, oh, I mean, there's that other book I really want to read though. And I ended up just reading a chapter of two from every book that I picked up and just moving on to the next one. And yet I learned so much from this time because I was able to pick up so much information just from the few things that I read. And I can only imagine how much smarter I would be if I just had a library near me. Like, if you have a library near you, I would highly recommend just going there and trying to develop a habit of reading because it will go such a long way. Because I think now that we're spending so much time on our phone, on our electronics, like, I'm just going to be a boomer when I say this, but I do think it's important to get away from it and just take some time off, just read a nice book. Sit amongst other people who are just studying or something. It's really relaxing, honestly. Another thing that I really, really became aware of was that I am really not good at my job or my studies, because I picked up a few books on, computer science because I thought, why not just study something related to computer science? Every single book that I picked up, I was completely lost. Like, I had no idea what these words were, and I was so scared because that would mean to get a job, I'm absolutely just done for. Like, the job market is awful and it's so competitive out there, and I am not employment worthy right now. And that gave me so much panic in the moment. But something to note is that in my diary, I do mention this anxiety, but I ended up with this quote. Not all bad though. Can't give up hope. I can sit and cry about it or try to change things. Personally leaning towards the latter. I can do this because anyone can do this. And I love this bit of optimism that came from me when I was writing this. I can do this because anyone can do this. And that is actually such a neat idea when you think about it. Yes, I have ADHD. Yes, I'm depressed. Yes, I have low motivation. But if anyone was to sit down and study these things, they could do this, honestly. Like, this is not really that hard. Yes, it might take me more time than someone else who, like a neurotypical person, but I can definitely do this. Like, if I imagine myself doing this over the course of a few weeks, yes, I can absolutely study these things. And to interject, current me can happily say that I am doing this. For the past 2 to 3 days, I actually have been studying these topics, and I'm also working on this video, and I don't want to get ahead of myself and say that I'm fixing things, but I'm doing things and it's possible. It's entirely possible. So there is hope. Yay! That's something to be happy about. While I was here, I also got stuck in this rain thing where it was raining really heavily, and I didn't record any footage of this either. You can only see this one where I was in the car. But when I was coming back out from the store, the road ahead was completely flooded. So I had to walk in like knee-deep flood water, and I was wearing shoes and I couldn't get them wet, so I had to take them off. So I was walking barefoot in knee-deep rainwater. It was awful, but yeah, that's something that happened. I think from my time reading in the library, and then when I went back home, I would draw, or I would, try to journal, which I didn't do much of, honestly. I started journaling a bit later into the trip. I realized that there is so much more fun to be had if you don't just like try to move on to the next thing constantly, which I know somewhat contradicts what I said about how I was struggling with books. But what I also realized was that I don't have to experience every single thing. I don't have to be in touch with every single thing. Because during this time, I was not on my phone. I was really not using my phone that much. And I was missing out on so much stuff that was going on, because if you're on social media, you know how you always have to stay up with the new drama because, your friends are talking about it and you want to see what's going on. And it's just being in tune with the world constantly is so exhausting. And the time that I took off here to not do that actually made me realize that there's much more peace to be had if you actually just let go sometimes and just, be alive for a bit. You don't have to be on top of everything at all times. Like, when I did get back on the internet, I did like make sure that I was keeping up with stuff that was important, especially with more social and political issues. But when it came to drama and stuff, I just did not care. And even now that I'm done with this trip, like when I'm back home here, I have kind of stopped caring about a lot of drama. I don't use social media as much as I used to, because I realized none of this really matters. Because when I was a kid, I used to think, oh, I need to, be the one cool kid. Like, even when I grow up, I want to be in touch with everything. I don't want to be the out of touch boomer or anything like that. And I think they had something figured out, really, because being out of touch is not exactly as bad as I thought it would be. There are certain things that you need to be in touch with, I think, because some of the books that I read there were about, well, let's just say, against capitalism. And I realized that there was a lot I need to be aware of. But the kind of things that I usually waste my awareness on do not really deserve my awareness. I just spend so much time researching, understanding, and watching these videos on topics that just do not matter, really. And I realized that I could have been using this time on more productive things. And by productive, I don't mean work. I mean things that really mattered to me. Even if it was something like studying Transformers lore, that'd be fine. But I mean, if you're watching something like the Logan Paul versus something boxing match or some shit, that is, well, unless you're into boxing yourself, that is actually just kind of a waste of time, really, isn't it? I would spend the day in the library, but during the evenings, my dad would like to go on drives because, well, he doesn't get to be in the car much, and to be fair, even I don't drive the car around much. So we would go to drives to the nearby places, and I mentioned this in the last video, but I love driving so much. There is something so therapeutic about being behind the wheel and just driving, and I think it's something to do with the ADHD, where it's like I need something that is not going to take my attention fully, but at least give me, like, at least take over my attention enough that I can be at a baseline level of like clarity. And that was what driving gave me. And driving there was so much fun, especially because the roads over there were a lot better than the roads back where I live. That was just really good. And I got to visit these different places, and I think it matters to go to places, to visit these places that are a bit different from the ones you live in. There's something about the joy of discovery or whatever. What also happened was on Halloween, the day of Halloween, we went to a resort for like the end of October to, the 1st of November. And well, the drive there was quite terrifying actually, because we went from inside this forest road. I don't know if I have footage of it, but it was really scary. It was genuinely one of the most scary things I've been in, because there were barely any other cars there, and the roads were like completely destroyed. And it's the kind of road where you expect yourself to be jumped by some sort of wild animal, which thankfully didn't happen to me, but I feel like there was a distinct possibility of that happening. Thankfully, I didn't die and I made it. And when I tell you that I think this was the most important moment, like, other than being able to go to the library, I think spending time in the resort was so good for me. Because for one, my internet wasn't working properly, so I had to spend a bit more time, well, doing nothing. So one of the things that we did was we went on a walk at the street outside the resort, which again is just like this abandoned, scary road, right? And this road was just such a joy to walk on. I mean, look at this. There is a different kind of peace and tranquility that I experienced just walking through this area. And I know I was on my phone recording it while I was walking, but I was not looking at my phone when I was doing this. I was looking at the trees. I was just making it so the camera follows where I was looking. But yeah, I mean, this specific time walking in the forest was genuinely one of the best things that I'd experienced. It also was kind of terrifying because on the way back the sun was starting to set, and I was like, oh my god, we're gonna get eaten up by animals, because I can assure you there were animals in this forest. We saw a peacock outside our house. I am 100% sure there were at least snakes in this area, so I was not very confident in that, but for the most part, a really good experience. And then finally, we headed back. And I think it was at this point that I was actually kind of getting tired of driving. I know I just said that I love driving, but there's definitely too much of a good thing. Can be the case. So once we got back home, and then, I spent another day at the library, the next day we were setting out to my mom's relative's place. And when we went there, I let her do most of the driving. So that gave me time to just kick back, be on the passenger seat, be a passenger princess, and just draw and look at the scenery and everything. And that was actually really good. Like, I didn't expect it to be good. I did not expect being a passenger princess to be that much fun, because I'd be like, okay, well, that's going to be boring, right? No, it was not boring. In fact, it was actually some of the most fun that I've had. I don't know why. It was really enjoyable. In the meantime, another thing I wanted to mention was that before leaving on this journey, I was like, I need some games to play when I'm there, because I'm going to be so bored. And I downloaded A Witch's Tale, which was recommended from some Reddit user for beginners to JRPGs. And I will say, this is not a good game for JRPG beginners, but it was a great game to be playing during the Halloween time. What I realized from this game was that I absolutely hated it, and I did not want to play a second of it again. So after a few days of trying to play it, I dropped it. I just completely gave up on it. This goes back to the thing that I was talking about when I was talking about game burnout, where I was trying to get into new games and like explore my horizons and everything. And this is the point where I realized there is such a thing as going too far in that direction. Because I spent so long trying to get into these JRPGs and, kind of games that I don't like, that I just was forcing myself to do things that I knew I was not going to enjoy. So once I gave up on it, I didn't care that much anymore. I decided that I'd just be playing the games that I'm interested in. Unfortunately, after a few hours and days of doing this, I kind of realized that I just don't find any video games interesting anymore. And unfortunately, what I had said in that video is true. I think I just don't like video games anymore. Right, I'm recording this in post because this is the clip that I was talking about in the video when I said, referring to the previous video. I'm describing so much of what is an integral part of most video games out there. And what that leads me to believe, what if I just don't like video games? I got obsessed with playing the games that others are playing and having fun the same way as them. And you can see that I was already thinking about the same issue. I'd already almost touched it, but I wasn't close enough. In that video, I say two things, that this might be because I'm depressed, and this also might be because I just don't like video games anymore. And I think both of these things were quite true from what, this video is talking about. However, I do think it's interesting that when you watch more of that video, it kind of feels like everything that was about to happen from that point onwards was just things that I was talking about in that video. And it's so fascinating how things went on from there. While I was searching for that one clip that I wanted to add here, I also came across this other bit in that video. So just listen to this. And that made me realize, what if the reason why I really like games that feel realistic, that are not cartoony, that are not video gamey, that are realistic and let me feel part of the world, it's because I want to go outside? What if I just want to travel? Or if that's what I want from life? And I think that was worth exploring further. Because every time I do go outside, at least on my own, at least when I'm doing something I want to be doing, I sometimes end up having fun. Most of the times, I would rather stay home. But sometimes, some rare few times, I like going outside. I think this is also so fascinating because I was completely on the mark. This video, the first one, about video game burnout, then leads into a video about where I'm talking about how depressed I am, which is also something that obviously was already mentioned in the burnout video, that maybe I'm depressed, maybe I want to go outside. It's so fascinating how these three videos are connecting to each other. It's just so fascinating to me to see that growth happening in real time through these videos. And I think that's one of the main reasons why I love doing this, why I love putting my thoughts out there. And I just wanted to mention it because I really found it cool when I was editing this. But that's where we get back to the previous point where I said, you just have to let go. You don't have to be in touch with everything. So these days, I have become a lot more accepting of the fact that I'm not really a video game person anymore, which is a bit ironic since this channel was primarily focused on video games, and it probably still will be. Because after I got back home, I got into Nier Replicant, and dare I say, I really enjoyed that, and I'm still playing it, and I'm having a blast. So maybe it's not over, but maybe it's just that I gave up on the forcing myself to play the game and just doing it because I enjoyed thing that worked in my favor. Because Nier Replicant is a bit more my style of a game. I'm not really exploring my horizons or expanding my comfort zone or anything. This is the kind of game that I'm comfortable with playing. I think that this is another tick in favor of not doing things because you think you have to and doing them because you want to. Of course, this only really works on the level where you're depressed with being able to do things that you enjoy. With things, when you're depressed about doing things that are actually important, like your work or something, it's not as easy to really balance that, is it? When I was at my mom's relative's place, that was also a really good time, because for one thing, there was a cat there. My cousin has a cat, like she just takes care of this cat. It's just a stray cat, the cat just visits her sometimes. And it was really fun playing with the cat now, honestly. I kind of like cats. Cats are great, yeah. I love cats. And the time there was actually quite fun because there was this beach and my mom and, my aunt, they wanted to walk across this beach barefoot because that's apparently good for your soul or something. And I was like, whatever, sure, I'll join you. And I should mention, this was about half an hour of walking, and I don't think I've ever felt this much at peace. My phone was only there for recording a few minutes here and there. For the most part, I was just walking. And it was splendid. I mean, the sun was slowly setting to my right, and you can hear the waves and you can enjoy the peace. And I'll just give you a few seconds of this. I really do think that this is one of the best things that I've been experiencing lately. Just walking, and not walking while going somewhere or trying to do something. Walking just for the sake of walking. It's a practice in mindfulness. It's about being aware of your surroundings and stuff, and it's about being in the moment. It's incredibly hard to do this, but if you can, it can go such a long way in helping you just feel better about yourself and stuff. I really do think so much of it does come down to being in the moment and being in touch with the reality. I think that's been one of the biggest things that I've learned. Also, I should mention another one of the reasons why I was so like locked into the moment when I was doing this was because there were crabs on this beach. Like very small crabs. I could see them running while I was walking and I was terrified, and yeah, I was barefoot, so that was really scary. I had some really expensive ice cream milkshake thingies. I have no idea why ice creams are this expensive. And I went to the mall. Thankfully, I actually got myself one t-shirt. One singular t-shirt, guys. And one amazing thing was that I got to drive my aunt's car. The thing about my car is that it's an automatic, but my aunt's car is a manual. And look at this. This is like the most raw feeling car. Like it feels so raw when I'm driving it. I can feel the car, like I'm just shoving this. Something you might have noticed by now is that a lot of the pictures I've taken can be of different qualities. Some of these are taken from this app that gives you sort of like a retro look, and I don't think it's quite nailing what I'm going for. But this is also something that I was enjoying. Novelty. This is one of the best things that I've learned from this journey. You should sometimes try to do new things just because they're new. I would feel so embarrassed using a different camera because it feels pretentious. But in this journey, all the pictures are taken from different cameras, and I also would get so much anxiety because I'd be like, well, okay, well, if all these are not consistent, like I won't be able to put these together. Some of these are taken in portrait, some of these are in landscape, some of these are from this camera or that camera, some of these just don't fit together. And guess what? That's fine. I was absolutely fine with this. I was just having fun with these camera modes and stuff, and I really like it because you can tell that I was having fun here. This concept of novelty was another thing that I learned when I started to do this weird new practice where I name my days. And this is a bit of a weird thing. When I'm writing my diary entry for the day, I give my day a name. So for here example, I have 8th November called Borrowed Time. Borrowed Time was on the last day of the journey when we were supposed to go back home, but we stayed at my dad's place where the library is. We stayed there for one day, and I called this day Borrowed Time because that's what it is, it's extra time. 2 days later, 10th November is called Rejuvenation because that was the day when I got back. And this practice of naming days doesn't feel that important in this context. Today, as I'm recording this, is 28th November 2024, and this one is called Momentum. Why is it called Momentum? Well, I think for me it was because yesterday was extremely productive, so I thought today's theme is going to be carrying that onwards. And this practice of naming days basically gives purpose, goal, reason to each day. Because I think what happens when you're like just sitting around doing nothing is that each day kind of feels the same. It kind of feels like I'm just trying to get through this day on to the next day. I'm just living for the sake of living at that point, and it's depressing. It's really depressing because you look back at the last 4 weeks and nothing has changed. It's been the same. You can't say a single thing about what was important about any of these. But then yesterday when I was going to bed, I wrote this. 28th November 2024. Before you begin writing today's journal entry, think about this. Isn't it crazy you got to have a whole new day? You have hours more to live. Isn't that wonderful? Enjoy. That might sound a bit corny, and that is a theme that I will discuss later. But I really started to given to this idea of the fact that each new day is actually something that I'm getting to live. I'm getting the experience. I'm getting, like, 24 hours to just live. I don't know how to explain this in a way that makes sense, that will explain why this is such a cool thing. I'm getting 24 hours of time to live. Does this make any sense? Do you understand why this is so special to me? Because before I'd be like, oh, it's another day. What am I gonna do? I just need to get through this day. But now I don't think of it as getting through it. I need to live this day. I can absolutely take this day off and do nothing if I wanted to, or I could make it special somehow. Because why not make it special? Why not do something different today? Achieve something today. And achievements don't have to be about something special. It can literally just be, I'm gonna go outside on a walk for 10 minutes today, or I'm gonna draw this thing today, or I'm gonna make myself a cup of coffee today. Anything that is out of the ordinary, something to make the day stand out. Well, we got a bit sidetracked from the trip there. Going back to the previous point where I said that the writing sounds cringe, and I think a lot of this video will also sound cringe. To hell with cringe. I do not give a single shit about cringe anymore, okay? I have spent so much time off the internet that I do not care. That irony poised mindset of where I was like, oh, if I say this, it's gonna come off as cringe, has gone. I do not care about cringe. I am here to live. I'm here to say whatever I want. I'm here to do whatever I want. I don't care if it's not good. This video that I'm making, I'm not sure if it's gonna be good. My last video was awful, and I'm fine with this. I'm just gonna embrace it, because the more I push myself into a corner about avoiding being cringe, the less I'll get to live. Seriously, the fear of being pretentious, the fear of being cringe, is just holding me back so much from doing the things that I want to be doing. I don't think cringe has a purpose, even if it's like someone liking the show that you dislike, or like some kids being really excited about Fortnite or Roblox or something. If someone's having fun, and if that's cringe to you, you just gotta reflect. Why is it making you mad? That's something I've also been doing, because I realize that things make me cringe. And I ask myself, what is exactly cringe about this? Turns out there's usually not that much that's cringe about it. I can make up reasons to be mad at it, but in reality, I kind of don't give a shit. Lastly, when I was at my aunt's place, a lot of the time that I spent there was also spent journaling, because again, I didn't have that much to do. So I would journal. And I do think journaling is a very good skill to have. I mean, being able to read a book is insane, but being able to write a book is even more insane. But guess what? It's actually easier because you're writing about yourself. How do you journal? I'm not going to tell you that, because there are a million videos out there that can do that for you. What I'm going to talk about is the fact that journaling is actually really good, because I felt myself processing all these emotions when I was there. I felt myself sitting down, throwing away my phone, and just being there, writing. Whatever came in my head, I just wrote it down, which led to one of my other discoveries. I am not actually socially exhausted. This is something I kept telling myself for a few months before this, where I was like, oh my god, I'm so socially exhausted. I cannot return these texts. I cannot do this. I guess at some point I was socially exhausted, but what it then turned into was a sort of apathy, a sort of disregard for the very concept of talking to people, because I started to get irritated and frustrated, because it took me so much energy to talk to someone, and then when I did, sometimes things just wouldn't go my way, and it was an awful cycle. It was not one that made me happy. But what I started to do on this trip was, I was just texting people. Every time I did pick up my phone, what I used to do, I'll go through my friends list, I'll text someone that I want to talk to, and I'll just do it. I won't think about what I have to say, what I want to do, none of that. I'd just be like, hey, what's up? You know what? Most of the times it was kind of awkward, but I did it. At least it got out of my head. Like, getting things out of my head was really important. If I want to talk to someone, I cannot be thinking about whether or not I'm going to talk to them, what I'm going to say. All of that ruminating, anxiety, overthinking, all that shit is pointless. Throw it away. If you want to text them, do it. Text them, leave it, forget it, whatever. Bye. Fuck it. But I realized that what was really stopping me from, being social was actually all the overthinking I was doing, all the ruminating that I was doing, instead of just doing this and getting it over with, because that's what it is, really. If you fail, it honestly does not matter. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't, because I was like, well, I'm going to lose this friendship. Not texting them is also going to make me lose the friendship. Waiting there for them to text me or for me to come up with a cool thing to say, all of this can destroy my friendship. And me texting them and the conversation turning out to be dry can also destroy the friendship. But only one option will not leave me in this depressing, overthinking mess. And guess what? Sometimes when you text people, things actually kind of go well because you can just talk about stuff. That's something that I realized I have to give up on this idea of there being a perfect time and a perfect plan for everything. You gotta handle a little bit of uncertainty and just go into it sometimes. Dare I say, yeah, just gotta do it. One of the most fun things that happened was on the way back when I was on the highways. I was driving kind of fast because I got used to driving a bit fast when I was on my way there. Basically, when I was going there was this one bit where we were in a forest road and the sun was kind of setting and it was terrifying because, well, it's a forest road and I didn't see a lot of other cars and I was scared. And my mom had a migraine, so she was sleeping on the passenger seat. So I had to drive really fast through these like winding forest hill roads kind of stuff. But I also make sure that I didn't wake my mom up because there were a lot of potholes on the way. And that balance, the anxiety that the sun was setting, that made me drive absolutely insane. And I feel like the soul that I got from Assetto Corsa actually came into work when I was doing that. Absolutely insane. So even when I was going back home, let's just say I wasn't always following the speed limit, especially on roads that weren't straight. I don't like driving on straight roads. Maybe it's because, I'm fat. I don't believe I can say that word on YouTube. I'm sorry about that. Driving on curved roads, driving on mountain roads, going fast on them is very dangerous. You shouldn't do this. You should not do this. And I would never do it again. I would never do it again. But for the few times that I did it, I must admit I had a little bit of fun doing it. I hope you're doing well. If you watch this far, I'm sure you're not doing well because there's no way anyone would watch a video like this. I think the most important things that I learned was I gotta live in the moment more. Gotta stop thinking about the future or the past and all those things. Unfortunately, they were right. You just have to be in the moment. You just have to be here. You also have to take those decisions, take those risks. Just do stuff sometimes. It's a bit optimistic, and of course, there's room to just do stupid things, but when you're depressed like I am, I do think you hold yourself back from doing things that were just gonna be fun for you. Like, I was holding back from meeting one of my IRL friends for so long, but then I did it, and I actually had fun doing it. So, yeah, sometimes you just have to make those decisions and just go for it. Just go wild, have fun. Don't hold yourself back too much. If you feel like doing some things, just do it. Just do it and get it over with. Maybe you won't have fun. Maybe it won't work out. It's fine. It'll be fine. It'll just be fine. And lastly, just this idea of making sure that the time you spend is special. Making sure that you're not taking anything for granted and thinking, I have to do this or I need to get through this because you're getting this. You're getting these opportunities to live, to explore. There's so much. There is so much to be thankful for. And gratitude can go such a long way in being thankful for it all. You have to understand, during this trip was the one time that the whole elections were going on in the US, and all of my friends were just so depressed and, just not having a good time. And it made me sad as well, seeing them in that way. And I think it's important to not give up hope. It's really easy to give up hope, especially considering what happened to those elections. I do think there is a lot worth living for. I do think life does give you a lot to appreciate. Even if things feel like they're going to fall apart, there's always going to be some reason to keep going, I think. Which is very easy to say as someone who doesn't really know what your struggles are. And I wish I knew. I wish I could tell you. But even if I knew your struggles, I don't think I would have the right words because I have not been through your struggles. Whatever they are, though, I'm pretty sure you can find something to be thankful for. You can find reason to keep going. And if you can't, then I absolutely believe you should. If you have friends, if you have loved ones, rely on them. Take their help. Keep going. Live your dreams, whatever. All of that optimistic bullshit. I think everything's gonna work out eventually. It's gonna be hard, but I think it will. Do I want to start going on my socialist rambles now? Probably not. We're gonna end it here. Yep, that's gonna be it. Bye bye. But spending some time detached, working on myself away from the things that bothered me, it was kind of helpful, like just walking away and living for a bit. I think it helped quite a bit. Unfortunately, that's not a permanent solution. I mean, I can't just get away from everything, right? But I think what I took away from it was the mind state that you're in goes a long way in deciding the mind state that you're going to be in for the rest of the time, right? It's sometimes worth it to focus on just being with yourself away from everything else, you know? Figuring out how to do that is the hard part. I mean, what really helps you disconnect from everything? That's kind of the hard part, because I always thought it was video games. It wasn't. Video games don't really help me disconnect, unfortunately. Naturally, I can't say I have found all the answers.